My name is Tarmack, and this is a performance and gameplay review of the Turing Test on PC. Gameplay first, with a link in the description to jump to performance and options if that's your thing. The game releases on Steam and Xbox One on August 30th, with a base price of $19.99 US. The Turing Test is a first-person puzzle game in the same vein as Portal, developed by Bulkhead Interactive and published by Square Enix Collective, which is their indie publishing division. It's the first game under the name Bulkhead, but the same developers did another game called Numa: Breath of Life back in February last year. The player takes control of Ava Turing, an engineer who starts out being awoken from cryosleep on board a space station orbiting the Jupiter moon Europa. Something has gone wrong with the base down on the moon and contact has been lost. It's up to Ava, with the help from a computer AI narrator of sorts named Tom, to figure out what's going on. The narration has a really heavy Portal overtone to it, but without the humor aspect. In Portal, the dry laughs were frequent, but in the Turing Test, Tom is a much more stereotypical AI. There's quite a bit of interesting dialogue well peppered throughout the missions, and you never really go for too long without some conversation going on, which is very well paced, just like it was in Portal. The game revolves around basically two abilities. The first is being able to pick up objects and move them around, and the second is an energy manipulation gun. Throughout the levels, you'll encounter what are in effect power outlets. Your energy gun can pull the power source out of some of them from any distance as long as you have line of sight, and store up to 3 charges of that power, which can be put back into most any power source that you come across. There are also power source objects that you can pick up and physically place into the outlets. So it's a lot like a game like Portal or Talos Prophecy, where you're presented with a good number of logic puzzles, having to look at areas from different angles, through windows, deciding whether a certain power source should be a physical block or perhaps a power charge from your gun from across the room somewhere. Later in the game, it gets more complex by adding different colored power charges with other unique properties like cycling on and off. The game took me about 5 hours all in all to complete. There are 7 chapters, and each chapter has an optional, more difficult puzzle area where you can learn a bit of extra backstory into the overall plot, which is a nice touch. I couldn't complete one of the optional puzzles because I just couldn't figure it out, but I got all of the rest of them. So, now you know what the game is about. So what's good about it? I found the pacing of puzzles to be excellent. The steady difficulty progression and inclusion of new mechanics throughout was evenly spaced as to keep me interested the whole time. I finished the game in 2 sessions only because I started the first session at around 11 p.m. Otherwise I would have played straight through.
These people should not have been sent here. It's not safe.
Manned space travel is not safe.
The dialogue between Ava and Tom is great. Hearing banter back and forth between a human and computer perspective on the importance of certain tasks and how puzzles can be solved was really good. The voice acting is absolutely spot on. And there's a moment. I can't tell you what it is, or when it is, nor would I if I could because it's a huge spoiler, but there's more to this game's story than meets the eye, and there's a moment in this game. You know, I've probably already said too much. Let's just say that it's not just a puzzle game, but it's a great narrative as well, and the title of the game has quite a few meanings if you've ever spent any time learning about the mathematician Alan Turing. It's not all good, however. The game takes place in the first-person perspective, and there are a few portions of puzzles that involve rapid movement. This rapid movement can induce some form of motion sickness if you're prone to that. Now, it doesn't happen a lot, but it is something to be aware of. There are audio logs that can be found throughout the game, and some of them are quite difficult to hear. I'll grant that sometimes this can be intentional, but it felt a good number of these didn't actually have any reason to be so difficult to hear. One interesting detail, though, that I felt was very clever is that you'll notice that the AI, Tom's voice, is always clear in every audio log, even if the people speaking in the audio log are somewhat staticky or more difficult to hear. Given that it would be the AI recording the audio logs for people, it stands to reason that his voice would be digitally added to the log rather than picked up by an analog microphone. It's a clever touch. Now, I'm not sure if this is an engine issue with Unreal or the game itself, but since there are so many objects that you can pick up and look at, it does turn out to be relatively noticeable that the labels on transparent objects frequently disappear when you're trying to get a closer look at them. For a game with so much backstory available to players who explore a little bit, this can present a bit of a problem. Let's talk about performance and options. Your options menu has most of the options you would expect from an Unreal 4 engine game. Field of view ranges from 60 to 120, standard resolution and full screen windowed options, VSync, crap like motion blur, etc. The only real problem here in my view is the simplification of anti-aliasing down to low to ultra option rather than letting you select individual anti-aliasing types that you might prefer. Volume sliders for music, voice, and sound effects, Something to consider here is that on my system, I had to really drop the music and sound effects sliders down because the voice was mixed really low. I had to do that in order to actually hear the voice in some situations. An interesting option under gameplay is streaming load. This is a feature in the Unreal 4 engine that allows you to load the next level in the background so that it's ready to go when you approach. It felt quicker to load levels, but I didn't directly measure the time, so I don't want to make an empirical claim here. Controls are very basic first-person shooter options, but are fully rebindable on both keyboard and on gamepad. And as far as performance is concerned, the vast majority of the game ran at a lovely 60 frames per second. I'm playing on an i7-5820K with 16 gigs of RAM and a GTX 970. That 60 frames per second was only a majority of the time though. It's worth mentioning that about 5 or 6 times during the playthrough, I had a section here or there that a significant frame rate drop happened, as in down to probably 10 to 15 frames per second, which would last for a few seconds. It's not a deal breaker, but it does seem to indicate there was a bit too much being rendered out of view at the time, which isn't great optimization. Personally, I think the game looks good, but then many games before this have done the sterile white texture style design, which, let's be honest, even Portal didn't have amazing texture quality. There are a few places where it really stands out as poor textures, but for the most part, it's fine in my opinion. So, to wrap my thoughts up into a recommendation, the Turing Test is, in my opinion, a very good puzzle game. It has a great narrative and really spot-on voice acting. The graphic quality is good, but won't be on many people's top 10 lists. Performance is good for the most part as well, can easily be made better by toggling options down if you don't have a beast of a PC, but it does have some spots that were more than just rough. And it is definitely, from both a story and puzzle perspective, a game that will make you think. This is a title that I absolutely do recommend. I had a great time going through it, and while there isn't very much for replayability here, not every game needs to be replayable over and over ad nauseum. This has been a review of the Turing Test by Bulkhead Interactive on PC. It releases on Steam and Xbox One August 30th for a $19.99 US-based price tag. My name's Tarmack. You can follow me on Twitter at GnomeCast and subscribe here to keep up on content releases. Thanks for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.